design a long-term vision. I think that was the only thing that really kept me going through all the downtimes. And I wanted to quit so many times. I
Yeah.
think that you have to create a life so amazing and sometimes a little absurd.
Welcome to Extraordinary Stories. I'm your host, Forbes Shannon, and today we have the cowboy of the capital world. He's the founder of Cowboy Capital, and I'm really excited for this conversation. Please help me welcome Joe Rinderknecht. Joe, thanks for being here, man.
Now, thanks, Forbes. Excited to be on here and listen to a bunch of your stories. And it's really cool, all the really amazing people that you guys have on your podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities that emerge from these extraordinary people. There's a lot of patterns that we've seen. You were nominated by two extraordinary people that find you extraordinary, Michael Mahoney and Brady Edwards. How do you know Michael and Brady?
Yeah, so I know both of them through, William Lamb's community of upgrade, but even more like with Michael Mahoney, um, it's really interesting. Like I actually met him for the first time in Denver at a real estate event back in I think it was 2017. Um, and what was wild about it, right, is Michael is from the Boston area and I'm from Utah, Idaho. My grandpa's cow ranch is in northern Utah. And somebody invited him to this real estate event, and we got to talking. And he's like, I only know one person in the entire state of Utah. And when he told me the name, it's funny because like I had talked to that same person like a couple days before, and that this person like grew up like with my wife
Wow.
and was like his family was a family friend of my family. So it was crazy that, one person in all of Utah he knew, I also knew. And so from there, we just talked a lot, and he was getting into the real estate world, and I was part of a real estate community. And so there was a big conference in Salt Lake it was like October of 18, I think it was. And I invited Michael to, and he drove up from Denver to come and check this out. And that's when we met William Lamb for the first time, right? He was also a part of this real estate community, and he presented, and both Michael and I, it just blew our minds, like what William was teaching. And for any of you who have listened, multiple people, I'm sure Brady and others have talked about, the madman within William or he's more of a Yoda, right? But
Yeah.
anyways, Michael and I just couldn't get enough. Like we took him to lunch, we sat with him that night at like the rewards banquet, and we were, I believe, the second or third group to ever go through Williams trainings when he very first got started back in late 18, early 19. And so it's just really cool to watch how Mahoney and sorry, I call him Mahoney,
Yeah.
um, how he and I have like grown, right?
Mm.
From back then. Like if you looked at us back then, like I had hair. I had a comb over. He was a little pudgy. And he'd be fine with me saying that, but like we've had a crazy glow up, if you will, in the last 8 years. We've aged like fine wine. But it's just really amazing to see like what we've accomplished and how we've grown, together as friends. Cause we've had many people say that like we are complete opposite in every fashion of the word, come from different values, different households, different
Mm.
religional stances, and just everything, right? And how much of brothers we really are, to each other. So I love Mahoney. I owe him a lot in my life. And he's one of the few people I know that if I called him right now, and said, I need your help, he'd fly. I mean, he is literally on the other side of the country from where I am. He'd fly here right now, So that's the kind of man that Michael is.
Yeah. Sure.
Brady's a lot the same. He's a very genuine person. I met him through Upgrade, and we've got to spend a lot of time together, and we've done a lot of like new things together as well. So I really love both those guys and appreciate them for who they are and their extraordinariness, right, within themselves. And so,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, that's our goal here at the Extraordinary Collaborative, you know? Like, extraordinary people beget extraordinary people, you know? You surround yourself with them naturally. Um, I the obvious question that we gotta start with is how does a cowboy get into real estate? Maybe let's start there, and then we'll work backwards.
Oh man, I mean that's kind of a long story, but the very short answer of it is growing up on the ranch. If you put yourself in my shoes, so I grew up in a very traditional family,
Mm,
right? Like my last name, Rinderknecht, means keeper of the herd. We've been
oh,
ranchers since the beginning of time, right?
okay.
And so I kind of, going through middle school, high school, um, I kept having people telling me that I have big shoes to fill because my name is Odell Joe Rinderknecht. Odell is my grandpa's name. Joe is my great grandpa's.
Cool.
Like my dad was the oldest son of all his siblings. I am the oldest son, and therefore like the oldest grandson of all my grandpa's grandkids that like still live on the ranch, right? And my dad kind of was a little bit of a black sheep. He left kind of the ranching and went into construction. And like my two uncles and a bunch of my cousins still live on the ranch. We live, about 3 hours away from the ranch and, still had our own little, homestead, if you will, growing up. But it was crazy. I just remember one day a guy who knew my great grandpa was like, Joe, you have really big shoes to fill, trying to walk fill in the shoes of your great grandpa.
Yeah.
And as much as I appreciated, like, the legacy that my great grandpa gave us, I didn't love that because 'cause I'm like, "You know what? No, I am my own person.
Mm,
You know what? I'm gonna walk in my own shoes." Right? And so I think from an early age, there was kind of the rebellious side of me wanting to come out and absolutely shatter tradition.
uh-huh.
And it didn't happen until like 2013 when, kind of a life crisis happened and I decided to start living for myself. And so like I was going to school to be an x-ray tech at that time because it was a safe, secure job. Like a
Yeah.
lot of ranchers have like a town job as they say it, right? To
Oh, okay.
put food on the plate. And because the ranch most of the time doesn't like they're most of the time breaking even. It's more of a lifestyle than a profit center, right? So a lot of ranchers, their wives or they have, jobs in town to,
Got it.
right? And so I was just always like, I don't want that for myself. And so after this life event, I got into entrepreneurship, I got into real estate, and I decided like, man, I'm gonna live for me and I'm gonna be an example to like all of my cousins, my siblings, even my parents, and completely break the mold. And so that's when I started really getting into like real estate, multifamily entrepreneurship. And so now I've been doing multifamily for, a decade, right? We're coming up on literally that 10-year time that I bought my first property. So I'm a little over 10 years that I've been involved in real estate and just learning the game. And it's amazing to see like how, my dad, my father-in-law all said, "Don't do real estate, it's risky." But guess what? My father-in-law's invested with me now, and my dad's almost 60 and asking me how he can start buying some properties because he has no retirement plan, right? And so I've been kind of a trailblazer um, for my own family, for my own like my wife and kids, and but setting an example for the rest of my family and for anybody out there watching my story and my path and just showing like you don't have to follow legacy, you can trailblaze your own path, you can do what you want to do. I like to joke about this, but it's like, anything that anybody's already done, like you can too. Joe Biden was president, like why can't you?
Yeah.
Sorry for
I
any of the
no, I love it.
non-Republicans
Uh,
listening to that. It's
y
just funny.
yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think, what's interesting is something that we've seen on Extraordinary Stories is there's a, there's usually a catalyst event that, like, flips someone's life upside down and changes the trajectory of their life. Was it an aha moment after that event happened where you just were like, "I need to do something different"? Like, how did you come to that conclusion to what you say, live life for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of forced upon me. Um, and Mahoney has been very close with me on this too. And um, I was in a really bad car accident in 2013, and I lost my little brother and grandma in that car accident. My
Mm,
little brother was 20, I was 21. We were 22 months apart. And up until that point, being the oldest child, I was the people pleaser. I was the guy, I was kind of a closet sinner. Right? I didn't want anybody to know my shortcomings. Like I tried
I
to be
get you.
perfect in every single way. My brother Clancy was a rebel. He didn't give a flying crap what anybody thought about him. And anything he wanted to achieve, he went after unapologetically, full steam. And so after he passed away, I realized, because, he passed away at 20 years old, which is way too freaking young. I just realized that I needed to live. Like, that's what really kept me going and moving forward was that I needed to live for both him and me. And that was what I needed at that point in time to overcome that tragedy, get through that grief, and become the person and the man that I am today, and start living for myself and unapologetically going after what I want. Right. And there was a period of time like I've said this on many podcasts. My parents don't really appreciate it, but my wife and I got married even 5 months after the accident, and both
Wow.
her parents and mine were both like, "You're too young. You're trying to fill a gap." But our saying was, "We love you, but screw you. We're doing what we want."
Mhm.
They don't love that I say that, but like that's exactly how we felt. It's like it's time to live our life on
Yeah.
our terms, nobody else's.
Thank you for sharing that, and, the idea that you just go full steam, that's something, in your brother's honor. That's really cool, and you actually started a nonprofit too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I high, level on that, it's called Tiny's Tribe. Tiny was my brother's nickname. Tribe is, like, all-encompassing community, and it's cool because actually Brady, Mahoney, and William were a big part of the last one that I did, the last event that I did, back in '22. But essentially, what we do in a nutshell is we help people, like, with the necessities of life, right? When they've had some kind of tragic incident or accident that resulted in death or severe injury to somebody in their family. So we help financially, we help with food, we help with, construction or just like home needs, right? We've renovated complete houses before. And
Wow.
then, the fourth thing that, I'm going to have Mahoney be a part of as I start to get it ramped up again is the mindset, because you can do one of two things in those circumstances. You can curse God, you can hate yourself, you can just go down a very deep, dark, hole,
Yeah.
where I've seen people get lost for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
Or you can take a path of enlightenment, and become better of a person because of what happened. Like well, that's what happened to me. I came out of that with an optimistic look on life, with a vigor and a desire to be something significantly more than I had been, that 21 years of my life.
Yeah.
And so like that's really what we hope to accomplish is help people move forward from these incidences a better person,
Mhm.
than they were prior to the accident. And the other purpose really is just to make life as easy as possible while they go through whatever event, that was, for them. So
Yeah, for sure. You talked about mindset, right? So that's, what Will Lamb does is help you upgrade your mind, right? Reprogram it. Was there like one breakthrough, like reprogramming or mindset shift that you had that kind of helped you break loose? Because I mean, now you have $40 million assets under management. Like what was there like a aha or like a switch that flipped in your mindset?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that, comes to my mind really quickly that, I did learn from William is he teaches a concept called the 90-year goals,
Mm,
right? So it's like most of us from where we're at right now aren't going to live necessarily 90 years from now, right? I'd be 125. But
right.
what it does is like if you can set goals for the next 90 years, because it's a part of your RAS or your reticular activating system, like it's like if you want to go buy a blue Ferrari, you're going to start to see blue Ferraris all
Right.
over the place, right?
Mhm.
That's what that concept is. And if and so like when I was because like when I met him in 18, I was still going through a fair level of grief, just in a different way, Um, and he helped me like with that 90-year goal, like create like to move from living for my brother to living for myself and looking forward to who I could become. Because that's what got me out of the pit was for my brother. Like I still love and miss him today, but now I'm living for myself and my wife and my kids and
Right.
those who come after me and those who look up. But like I think that's really what has helped me this last decade to keep after it is to have that long-term vision, knowing like who I can be and what I can accomplish, right? Because as you know, like if you have a goal, like you're gonna hit hard times and you're gonna
Right.
hit challenges and there's gonna be, these ups and downs. And so you gotta be able to just move forward no matter what happens. And so like I think that 90-year goal by setting those goals of who I want to be and what I want to accomplish, and 50 years from now, it very well could happen even sooner, right? And so it's really cool because right now I'm pretty much living the life that I designed, a decade ago, you know.
Right.
Decade
Yeah.
ago, it was right after the accident. I was driving semi, I was going to college, newly married, uh, working like 2 or 3 different jobs and wanted to buy big apartment complexes and make an impact to my community, and I'm doing that.
Yeah. For sure. Um, keeper of the herd is what your last name means,
Yep.
and you grew up a cowboy. I can't help but wonder if there's a connection between like keeping of the herd and the reason that you focus on multifamily apartments. Is there a connection there?
Um, Maybe. I had never thought of that, honestly.
um,
I'll have to think more about that. I mean, I got into multifamily more out of need than anything back in 16. My wife and I, we were living with my in-laws and we were both working for my in-laws and we were there for a year living in the basement. It is not a good situation to be in, living and working for your in-laws. And we ended up getting pregnant to boot, and so we're like, we got to get the freak out of here. And so we ended up buying a duplex in
okay.
Logan, Utah, and it's a small multi, and we got hooked after that because we used the equity from the duplex to buy a fourplex, and it's just I've never done like the house that I'm in right now is the first single family transaction I've done in the 10 years that I've done real estate. I've done multifamily the entire time.
That's fascinating. Um, okay, so uh, maybe explain what a cowboy is, and then help explain how that relates to you and your life as an entrepreneur now.
Yeah. Um, I think a cowboy, people would have probably many definitions of it. You know, somebody thought of cowboy, they probably think of like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood or
Yeah.
some of those good old boys that,
Uh-huh.
you see on the motion pictures, the movies and whatnot. But I would say that like to me a cowboy is more than just the guy that works cows and works horses and all that. I think it comes down to the values and the ethics of that person, right? And those values that I learned growing up on the ranch is like when you shake somebody's hand, like that is your word and your word is your bond, and really
Mm,
nothing else matters. Because if you can't keep your word or your handshake, then you lose your relationships that you had with that
mhm.
person, you lose your reputation because the community is so small that everybody's going to find out about it,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like relationships are very important, reputation is extremely important in the ranching world, and those are all traits and values that like we uphold here at Cowboy Capital. Is when we tell you we're going to do something, like we're going to do what we say we're going to do because that's a strong value of ours. Like my
Mm,
partner Levi Allen, on Cowboy Capital, he came from farming and ranching as well up in Eastern Oregon.
cool.
His family's ranch is probably about 5 to 10 times the size of my grandpa's. So he came from a much larger spread, and he's actually there right now. But
Mm.
those are all values that we uphold, and like we know how to work. If you tell us to go, dig that post hole, like we're gonna go dig that post hole. We're not, you know, corporate or institutional that we're not gonna go get our hands dirty too when you need to. Right. So I think that's, in my mind, like what a cowboy is. And even though I don't work cows every day and I don't work horses every day like I used to, it's like I take those values and those traits that I've learned from that lifestyle and use it in my business now. And but what I will say is like anybody who doesn't who thinks I'm not a cowboy is like, what, I can still rope and ride with the best of them. Put me on a horse bareback with a halter, and I can ride all day long, So,
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. So you brought up values, and then before you were talking about the shoes you had to fill from your grandfather and your great grandfather. Now, with your own kids, what's your parenting approach with that?
yeah, I mean, I still want them to create their own destiny, right? Of course, like my oldest that just turned 9, I've got a 9-year-old, 6-year-old, and 3-year-old boy, girl, boy, and my 9-year-old is really interested in entrepreneurship and like starting a business. And so it's like I'm not so like set on, oh, you have to just do real estate or oh, you have to do this. Like he came up with a business to buy a 3D printer and, create little fidgets or whatever and sell them. Cool. I'll support you in doing that. Right. What's more important to me with my kids is teaching them generational habits
Okay.
than, giving them generational money. Like I'm
What are
big.
generational habits?
What are generational habits? I mean, it's a lot of those values, right, that we talked about, right? I think if you can go through life and in business always having integrity and honesty, you're gonna be just fine, and knowing that like business comes from relationships and treating people correctly, if uh even if it kind of hurts you. How do I say that right? I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. Not that it necessarily hurts you, but it's like if I had a deal that went sideways, I would want to make sure that my investors were whole before I was whole.
Mm,
Is what I mean
mhm.
by that. Right? So
Yeah.
generational habits of treating people correctly, doing what you say you're going to do, working hard, working
Yeah.
smart. It's not all about working hard anymore. I mean, we know plenty of people who work really freaking hard like my dad, where has 2 or 3 jobs, but that doesn't mean he's rich. So you got to work smarter now, which is a little bit more important than work harder. Some of those generational habits that will, set him up for life and, generations to come after that. And I think too, like good, like financial habits, there's a
Mm,
lot of like subcategories of, generational habits like financial, how you treat your spouse and your kids, spiritual, fitness, like all philanthropic, like all of those things you could like pinpoint little habits that
yeah.
make you as a man or as a person.
Uh, it's funny. Work hard seems like such a cowboy trait, right? And now you're saying like this there's this adjustment, this pivot, this adapting to working smart. What does working smart look like for Joe?
Oh man. I'm kind of in the middle of it right now, like with my business, because I've been working hard for so long,
Uh-huh.
right? Where it's like I've worn all of the hats,
Mhm.
right, in my business. And so now the working smart for me is now it's like I'm using my dollars to buy back like time, right?
Okay.
So hiring, some virtual assistants, and we're going to be hiring an intern here shortly. And I think it's a matter of like instead like giving control. I think that's the other thing, like in the ranching community, is like most of the time you feel like you're the best one to do it. And so you never relinquish control or delegate, right? Like yeah, I think about my grandpa, he still feeds cows from the back of his truck. Right, like, that's a very old school thinking, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, it has to be him
Right.
that does it, you know? Um, and so I think, like, thinking smarter is, delegating, systemizing, automating, and I'm really getting into AI, right? And that's, like, also something that I've had to overcome is like, "No, I don't do AI, I'm not that guy." But now I've like talked to a couple other people and just realized like if I don't get on the AI bandwagon, I'm gonna get left in the dust, man.
Mm.
And it's like you have to pivot
Mhm.
with the new ages. And
Yeah.
and so like those are some ways that we're really working on, working smarter. And going back to like what William Lamb teaches is he talks about like design how you want your life. How do you want your week to be? How do you want to design like who you are, who you associate with, the clients you work with, right? Your business as a whole. Like everything that William teaches, I think comes all the way down, chunks down to the word design, right? Like at its core, it's designing everything in your life. And so it's like my kids are still very young and I wanna spend a lot more time with them instead of always being on a computer working,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm designing this next 10 years of my life is, like, spending every single second that I can with them and influencing, who they are as they grow and, letting go of control within my
Yeah.
business and paying people to bring them in for their for what they're good at. So
Mhm.
hope that
Now
answered your question. These are
no, it totally did.
questions that I've never really been asked for before on podcast. So this is great. I'm loving this.
Awesome. I'm glad you're having glad you're having fun, man. That's what we do here at Extraordinary. Something else we do at Extraordinary, and this is something that's emerged in all these extraordinary stories of these extraordinary people, is curiosity is like a key thing
Oh
for
yeah.
people who are extraordinary. So I'm curious what Joe is curious about lately.
Oh man. Um, that is a good question. What am I curious about? I would say kind of to what I was saying a minute ago is like right now I do feel like I'm living that life that I designed like a decade ago. And so
Yeah.
now I'm very curious with what I want going forward. Is like I'm in the middle of like redesigning that right now, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of it is I I spend so much time working on the computer and being reactive to emails. I'm curious, like
Hmm.
how can I run my business and only spend 25% of the time on the computer,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Right.
that's something that completely kinda disrupts my current world, is how can I only spend a quarter of the time doing what I do now and still be even more successful and more profitable than I currently am,
Mm.
right? So it's like
Hmm.
I'm in the middle of that journey and redesigning that next 10 to 20 years.
So I'm curious. You've recognized that you're living the life you designed 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where it like washed over you, or was it a slow, gradual? Like, how did you realize that you are living the life you designed?
Yeah, I would say it all came to a head this last October.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember back in, oh geez, probably 2016, 2017. It was in 2017. It's probably late 2017. I was driving semi. Um, I drove from 15 to 18, so for quite a few years there.
Sure.
I was on the phone with one of my business partners. We had just bought that fourplex, and I said, Darren, I'm going to buy large apartment complexes one day, right? And by large was like 100 plus units,
Okay.
right? And, at the time I was going to Utah State, Logan, Utah, and a couple of my mentors owned a big apartment complexes in Texas. And so it's like I knew that it could be done. I didn't know how a truck driving, cattle ranching, blue collar, because I've never had a corporate job. I've always been blue collar all the way up till 2018, right? Um, and so in October, I bought or it was actually end of September. I bought the biggest property I've ever bought before, and it was 292 units. I went from buying the biggest property was 58 units to
Mm,
292,
mm.
right? And so it's like we closed on three properties last summer, totaling, just under 400 units. And
Wow.
um, and so that was like one light bulb, like, holy
Mhm.
cow, I did it.
Yeah.
But also per what William teaches, just like designing, um, everything fell into place. So like we had moved from Utah to Idaho, and I always swore I'd never move back to Idaho because I grew up in Idaho.
Okay.
Middle school, high school, like 20 minutes from where I currently live.
Mhm.
And I always say like God had a crooked sense of humor taking me from Utah back to Idaho. Um, and like both my wife and I had no idea the why. But what
Mm,
happened was, so my business partner, he lives like 2 minutes away from me right now. Right. And I was commuting about 30 minutes a day to come to his house and work. And I kept driving past this house that was for sale, but it looked like way more than I could afford. And I guess to make a long story short, we decided to take our kids out of public school and put into private school. And we found a Montessori school just down the road from Levi, my partner's house. And so we put them in in that school. And then I had the confidence to call on this house that we're currently living in and said, hey, you know, can we do a deal? And we ended up buying this house seller financing.
wow.
And, because like both my wife and I are 1099 and we're not bankable right now, right? We haven't shown enough profit to get a loan. And so it was just crazy because just like all of the pieces landed at the same time. It's like we bought the 292 September 26th, and then we closed on this house like October like 1st or 2nd, right?
Wow.
And just like right after we closed, I came home and I'm just like this house is like pretty much like minus one or two pieces is like the dream house that we designed, early on.
That's
As far
awesome.
as like the acreage that we live on, the ability to raise, animals in a garden and, be right next to, Levi, and the community is a higher caliber community. A lot of like retired people who have made a lot of money and done amazing things in their career. Like I live next to an ex NBA player, right? And I bought this house seller financing 5% down, which like, crazy,
Yeah.
And so it was that time when I was like, I've made it. I hit that
Yeah.
goal, you know? So,
Well, it
yeah,
sounds like it was like 10 years of work and then it all happened in 1 week.
pretty much. Yeah, it all came to a head in 1 week. Yeah. And it was 10 years of a lot of tough times,
Mhm.
So
That's
it's all
awesome. Well, Joe, something that I ask everybody on Extraordinary Stories. For our listeners, if there is one piece of advice that they could do today to start living more extraordinarily like Joe, what would it be?
I'd say have a long-term, design a long-term vision. I think that was the only thing that really kept me going through all the downtimes. And I wanted to quit so many times. I
Yeah.
think that you have to create a life so amazing and sometimes a little absurd. Like, I don't know, like how, like the next phase I would imagine is like, how do I get to, $100 million from, where I'm at currently? That's like, I don't know how, and how do I go from an acre and a quarter to, a 50 to 100 acre, piece of land where we really build like our, forever home? Like, those are the next phases. Like, those kind of seem a little harebrained to me, so I think you have to, in a way, create that BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goals and go after them, go after that goal unapologetically, and don't listen to any of the naysayers because, as you go along this journey, you may find that they want to join you, you know? So I just say go after what you want, build that vision, and go after it unapologetically, you
I
know?
love it.
And really,
Build that vision.
the one last thing, the the other thing that I'm looking at my business now, and the reason we've been so successful is because of the relationships that we've built and the
Mm,
reputation that we've built with those relationships. And now we have results to back. That was actually something that I learned from another gentleman I learned at Upgrade with, Ryan Miller is a capital raising course that I've joined. That's his big three is reputation, relationships, and results. So I think start building relationships now, because I had a on that 292 unit that we bought, I had a guy join me on that deal, and it was his first deal that he did with me. But I met him before I had done a single multifamily transaction. Even before I
mm.
bought the duplex, I was saying I buy multifamily, right? Even though I'd never done it. And so I built that relationship over the last, decade plus with him, and he finally did his first deal with me, right?
Yeah.
So
Wow. Yeah.
build those
All right.
long-term relationships. The best time to do it was definitely a decade ago, but start today.
Yep.
Because
Hmm.
also on that 292 unit, I raised what 3.6 million from two people, and both of those people I started relationships with 7 and 8 years ago, and this was their first
Mm,
deal they've done with me.
mm,
So it's like
mhm.
all these relationships from 5, 7, 10 years ago are starting to hit now. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
right, what William says is like, if you design it in 90 years, it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen in the next week or year, or 10 years, it may happen in 20, but it'll happen, right? If you design it.
We should start calling you the long-term cowboy.
Right.
Long-term vision, long-term relationships. You can read more about Joe Rinderknecht and Cowboy Capital at joinextraordinary.com. That's JOINEXTRAORDINARY.com. At Join Extraordinary on all of our socials. I'm Forbes Shannon. Joe, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you, Forbes. It's been a pleasure.